Hello, welcome to SkepVet TV. I'm Dr. Brendan McKenzie and I'm the SkepVet. Today I want to talk about the dangers of alternative therapies for pets. There seems to be this general idea that alternative or natural or holistic therapies, whatever you decide to call them, are safer and gentler than conventional science-based medicine. Some of this, I think, comes from the misconceptions about what natural really means, which I discussed in a previous video. Obviously, this is also something that practitioners of alternative therapies are very likely to say and to promote, the idea that somehow what they offer is safer or gentler on your pet than conventional medicine. In most cases, that's simply not true, or there isn't any evidence to tell us for sure one way or another. So I'd like to talk about the dangers of alternative therapies and be very specific about what I see as the top 5 most dangerous alternative practices or therapies out there for pets right now. The first one is something called Neoplasene, also known as bloodroot. This is a product that has been promoted for a very long time by a couple of companies in particular and recommended by a number of alternative veterinarians that is clearly far more likely to do harm to your pet than to benefit them. Neoplasene is a derivative of the bloodroot plant. And in some folk medicine traditions, bloodroot has been used to treat superficial growths, warts and things like that. You put these products on and they dissolve the tissue. There is some idea that this bloodroot derivative might actually preferentially attack cancer cells and be less likely to kill healthy or normal cells. And there's some interesting lab research on this topic. Healthy cells are, of course, stronger and more resistant and more normal in their physiology than cancer cells. So there is some truth to the idea that in a test tube, a certain amount of this bloodroot derivative might actually be more likely to kill a cancer cell than a healthy cell. But there is abundant evidence in the real world, in real human patients, that these bloodroot products are extremely dangerous, that they indiscriminately destroy tissue when used as unregulated, untested over-the-counter products. And you can find plenty of pictures of people who have been mutilated permanently by using these kinds of bloodroot derivatives. There actually has been a study published reporting on 2 cases of golden retrievers in whom these products were used. And there was definitely significant harm to these patients as well. So this is one of the alternative therapies that is actually very directly dangerous and harmful and should be avoided. The FDA in 2016 sent a warning letter to one of the producers of Neoplasene, warning them that they couldn't claim that this was a medical therapy and that it was unregulated and illegal according to the FDA's guidelines. Unfortunately, the government doesn't have the resources or the political will to do much to enforce safety standards for medicines that are sold over the counter for pets. So this product is still available, and there are many other bloodroot products that are still available, but you should avoid them. They are illegal and they are dangerous. The next alternative idea, more than treatment, that I want to talk about is raw diets. Now, I've done a whole video on raw diets, so I will just say here briefly, there is no evidence at all that raw diets have any health benefits. There are many claims for how they can make your pet healthier, and so far nobody has done the research to prove that any of these claims are true. If some of them turn out to be true, there may be some reason to take the risks that raw diets present if they have real benefits. But so far, we don't have any real, believable evidence that raw diets have any health benefits at all. Only anecdote, and anecdote is simply not reliable. Unfortunately, we do have a lot of very robust scientific evidence that raw diets are harmful. They certainly can cause an increased risk of infections, and there have been cases of serious, even life-threatening infectious diseases, both in pets, in dogs and cats, and in humans, from exposure to raw pet foods. The reason we cook our foods is simply because it's safer. We're less likely to get infections and parasitic diseases from cooked food than from raw food. And the same is true for our pets. Many raw diets are also not nutritionally balanced, particularly homemade raw diets, and so there is a risk of nutritional deficiencies as well as infectious disease. Unfortunately, raw diets are quite popular right now, and I think it's important to understand that that popularity is based entirely on theoretical ideas and anecdotes, not on real science. And the popularity of these diets is part of what makes them dangerous. While many dogs and cats get away with eating raw foods without any negative consequences, compared to conventional cooked diets, there's simply a risk not worth taking. The third alternative therapy that I have on my list of the top 5 most dangerous therapies in alternative medicine for pets is going to surprise some of you. It's homeopathy. Homeopathy is an idea that anything that causes a symptom in large amounts will somehow magically reduce or treat the underlying cause of that symptom in small amounts. So if you take, for example, a certain amount of an herbal remedy, you chew on some leaves and you develop a rash. Homeopathy says that if you take those leaves and you grind them up and you dilute them extremely to the point where there literally is nothing left but the water or alcohol you diluted them in, and you take that, it will actually prevent the underlying problem that led you to get a rash when you ate those leaves. I mean, it's clearly an idea that doesn't make any sense scientifically, and it's an idea that's been around for a long time and studied extensively and hasn't proven to be true. So homeopathic remedies based on this idea are highly diluted most of the time, and most of them have nothing in them but water or alcohol. Now, there are a few homeopathic remedies that are less diluted and do have some trace chemicals left over from the original substance they were made from. And these can actually be dangerous directly in and of themselves. People and animals have been harmed by toxic ingredients in improperly prepared or insufficiently diluted homeopathic remedies. But for most homeopathic remedies, you can't be harmed directly by them because there's nothing in them. So how is homeopathy dangerous if for the most part it doesn't do anything at all? Well, it's dangerous in a way that a lot of alternative therapies are, which is that it delays appropriate science-based diagnosis and treatment. Homeopathic remedies are often available over the counter, and homeopaths are not trained in contemporary medical science, except for some doctors and veterinarians who unfortunately have fallen for the nonsense that is homeopathy and employ it. So most of the time when people are using homeopathy, they're not actually getting an appropriate diagnosis or treatment from a healthcare professional. And if you are taking homeopathic remedies, which are not doing anything, and you believe they're doing something, you're having a placebo effect that makes you feel better temporarily, your disease is still progressing. You're not actually treating the underlying course of disease. And the same is true for animals. So I have seen many, many dogs and cats come into my clinic with advanced disease who are very seriously ill, and who could have been treated more effectively at an earlier stage of their illness if they had been seen then, but whose owners chose to use these kinds of homeopathic remedies instead under the misconception that they were somehow safer or easier for their pets or less likely to cause harm. So the main way that homeopathic remedies cause harm is simply by delaying real medical treatment. The next in my list, the fourth most dangerous therapy, alternative therapy for your pet, is another surprise, I think, supplements. And supplements is such a giant category, some of which you could consider alternative and some of which are quite commonly used in conventional medicine, that it doesn't always necessarily fit neatly into one category or the other. But the reason that I raise the idea is that supplements are most often recommended before or instead of science-based medicines, pharmaceuticals, and other treatments. And the reason for this is the same misconception that somehow they are natural and safer than conventional science-based therapies. And as usual, there's simply no truth to this. Now, some supplements can be useful, but they have to be tested and proven to be safe and effective in the same way that any other medicine does, through scientific research. In most cases, this hasn't been done. The veterinary supplement market is completely unregulated. There are some rules about what supplement makers can claim about their supplements, and most of the time these are ignored or not enforced. There's very little quality testing, so if you buy a supplement, you can't even be sure that it has in it what they say it has in it, much less that there's any evidence that what it does have in it is safe or is going to have any benefit for your pet. So supplements are really just rolling the dice on something that has nothing but anecdotal or theoretical ideas behind it and hasn't been proven to be safe and effective in an appropriate, rigorous scientific way. Now, as I said, occasionally someone does come along and look at certain kinds of supplements in a science-based way, and we find benefits there. Fish oils are one example. There are also some potential benefits to probiotics, and these are often used as over-the-counter supplements. Unfortunately, this in some ways creates as many problems as it solves. Even though we know, for example, that fish oils may be safe and effective for some problems such as allergies or might have some benefits in dogs with arthritis, this gives them the impression that they are proven effective and safe for absolutely everything. So they're widely used for many other conditions for which there is no evidence. And it makes us think that all fish oil supplements or all probiotic supplements must be safe and effective, when in fact most products on the market haven't been tested and don't have good quality control. There are studies showing, for example, that many probiotics, when they're tested by independent laboratories, are mislabeled and don't have the same organisms in them or the same number of organisms that they say they do on the label. So supplements in general are definitely a roll of the dice. In particular cases, supplements may be useful for your pet, but you should always talk to your veterinarian not only about which supplements have good evidence that they're helpful, but also which particular products have been tested and shown to have good quality control so that we know that they're safe. I do think that some of the supplements in the market will turn out to be useful, others will turn out to be harmful, many will turn out to do nothing at all. But until we have the evidence, we're really just rolling the dice with our pet's health, and nobody wants to do that. Finally, the last therapy on my list of the most dangerous alternative therapies for pets is one that I have to admit I'm a little ambivalent about, and that's herbal medicine. The reason is that there's no question that unlike homeopathy, which has nothing in it most of the time, herbal remedies are mostly plants and they have actual active chemical compounds in them. And those chemical compounds have effects on the bodies of our pets or on our bodies if we take them. Many actual scientific remedies have been derived from plant chemicals. This is a wonderful source of potential medicines. There's a whole field of science called pharmacocognosy, where we study the chemicals in plants and look at them as potential medical therapies. We refine them, we purify them, we alter them, we test them, and many of them turn out to be useful and effective drugs. So I'm hopeful about herbal medicine in the sense that I think it has the potential to produce useful therapies. Unfortunately, most herbal therapies are not studied and used in this way. Most herbal therapies are used according to some traditional folk medicine system. Traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, the vestiges of European folk medicine traditions, most of which have been replaced by science-based medicine. Unfortunately, there's no evidence that these traditional systems actually work. Most of them don't make any sense scientifically, and for them to be true, major principles of established science would have to be wrong, and I think that's unlikely. So unfortunately, herbal medicine is still stuck in a pre-scientific folk medicine stage. So I do think that there is a chance that herbal medicine could be a rich resource of real therapies, but unfortunately right now, its practitioners are stuck in outdated alternative ways of looking at things more often than not. And they haven't completely convinced themselves that they need to abandon these systems and look at herbal remedies from a purely scientific point of view. As is the case with supplements, most herbal therapies on the market are unregulated and not properly tested for quality control. There are some industry groups within the herbal medicine industry that are trying to provide better standards for that. A lot of, for example, Chinese medicine remedies have been shown to have contamination with arsenic or lead or other dangerous chemicals, with ingredients from endangered animals, with pharmaceuticals. Some herbal remedies that are out there, for example, for erectile dysfunction in humans turn out to have Viagra in them. There are some groups that are trying to do a better job of controlling the quality, but industry self-regulation is always a dangerous thing because there's a bias there. And so I don't think we can entirely trust these companies to police their own business. I think we do need better regulation of herbal remedies, but only once we have scientific evidence to support the claims that are made for them. Herbal remedies have been associated with liver damage, with kidney damage, with allergic reactions, with poisoning from unintended ingredients or from pharmaceuticals. There's a huge literature showing how dangerous these things are precisely because they haven't been tested and regulated properly. That's it. That's my list of the current top 5 most dangerous alternative therapies for your pet. Number 1 is Neoplasene. Absolutely should not be used. Lots of direct harm. Number 2 is raw diets. Unfortunately very popular, and even though the risk is not as great as for something like Neoplasene, there is risk and there is clearly no evidence of benefit. So until there is evidence of benefit, the risk is not worth taking. Homeopathy, which most of the time is harmless in and of itself because there's simply nothing in it that can do anything at all, but dangerous because it replaces and delays appropriate medical diagnosis and treatment. Supplements, which are widespread, a huge billion-dollar industry, and most of which have not been properly tested, and most of which are not properly regulated. There are some supplements that are useful and that have scientific evidence for them, but you should always go and talk to your veterinarian about which supplements are useful and which are making claims without any evidence, and for which products have proven that they have a record of safety and accurate labeling, as opposed to the random ones that you'll pick up off the counter. And then finally, herbal remedies, one that I think is an area of alternative therapies which could potentially become a scientific field and could actually provide useful remedies, but which unfortunately is stuck in a mindset of alternative folk myth systems such as Chinese medicine and hasn't yet fully accepted science as the best and primary way for understanding whether these therapies work or not. As with supplements, a lot of herbal therapies are unregulated, often adulterated with harmful chemicals. There's a large literature showing that they're directly harmful to humans. There's also clear evidence that, like homeopathy, herbal remedies can be indirectly harmful by delaying appropriate diagnosis and treatment. These are the top 5. I hope that this has been useful to you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again here on SkepVet TV.